Good day, and thank you for choosing to watch this video. You know, the saying goes, the more things change, the more they stay the same. So I want to talk about why is it that today's FIA is a lot like yesterday's FIA. Why has the FIA not changed in accordance? So 2 days ago, I read a tweet from Ralph Schumacher. Most of you may know who Ralph Schumacher is. Just in case you don't know, Ralph Schumacher is Mick Schumacher's uncle and is Michael Schumacher's younger brother. I'm going to talk a bit about Ralph Schumacher because I do have a history with Ralph Schumacher. Ralph Schumacher was a Formula One driver for Williams. In 2003, he drove my favorite car ever. Him and Juan Pablo Montoya were the two drivers for my favorite car, for my favorite Formula One car ever. And the test driver was Marc Gené. This was 2003, the car we call the P83 FW25. I love this car. The P83 is the BMW engine code. The FW25 is the Williams chassis number. I love that car so much that because of that car, my love for it, I ended up in 2010 buying the V10, the 90-degree V10 that BMW built for the road version of that car. Absolutely adore that car. But that said, Ralph Schumacher's tweet was about Gunther Steiner's complaint about Mick Schumacher's performance. I agreed a bit because I like Mick Schumacher because Mick Schumacher has one thing going for him: his discipline and social consciousness. I think this guy may just need a change of team, but may have a good future ahead of him. But then I disagree with Ralph Schumacher from everything. I call Ralph Schumacher a less than average driver. As a matter of fact, to be blunt, he sucked. Ralph Schumacher and Juan Pablo Montoya, like I said, drove the P83 FW25. That car was deemed to be the most powerful engine in Formula One, and likely the most powerful engine in Formula One, except when compared to the Brabham BMW of Nelson Piquet that won the World Champions. That Brabham BMW was the first era of the turbo era, the first generation. That car was so powerful that they said when they dynoed it, they couldn't tell the exact power because it had more power than the dyno was able to report. That's why they had banned turbo in Formula One. I love that car. If you never ever heard that car, Google Nelson Piquet Brabham BMW, and the engine noise it makes is sensational. I love that engine noise. But that said, Ralph Schumacher with the most powerful car and the best launch control, which was 2003 P83 Williams FW25. Never once has Ralph Schumacher ever passed his brother on the track. I remember I've seen every single race in Formula One from 1997. Ralph Schumacher, I don't know why, but he's never passed Michael Schumacher, despite the fact that his teammate, Juan Pablo Montoya, passed Schumacher and called him a very bad names so many times. Obviously, for me, Juan Pablo Montoya was not the most brainiac driver. Even though he had the most powerful car, he always made mistakes, such as try to win the race in the first turn. And everybody knows, it's not the first turn that matters, but it's the finish line that makes the biggest difference. And Juan Pablo somehow didn't have the patience to wait for his time. And for that reason, obviously, we know the outcome. But Ralph Schumacher, again, is one driver I absolutely thought was, unfortunately for Williams, was the wrong driver for the Williams P83 FW25. We know Ralph Schumacher left Formula One after and went to DTM. DTM is probably my second favorite racing series, the Dodge Touring Masters. I've been watching it for a long time. Ralph Schumacher, once again, sucked in DTM. And now he's a reporter with German TV. You know, the crazy thing about that relates to the FIA of the old days. In the history of FIA, there has been 12 FIA presidents, as we would call them today. 12 FIA presidents, beginning from the 1860. I'm going to talk about the 2003 and what happened and how come the FIA has always been, in my opinion, just in the most fairest way I can put it, not a just organization for reasons I fail to understand. In 2003, first the year before, the P84 FW24, Williams BMW did not perform as well, and BMW complained to a point of maybe they were thinking about withdrawing from Formula One. The following year, the FW25 was redesigned, and the car had a huge potential. But the first few races, it wasn't a successful car. Now here lies the problem. During that time, Formula One cars had two tire providers. They were Bridgestone and they were Michelin's. Let me tell you, this is how privileged the Ferrari and Michael Schumacher was. The Bridgestone designed the tire exactly for Michael Schumacher's need. There were, I think, 2 more or 3 more cars that ran on the Bridgestone, but the tire was designed to fit and meet every need of Michael Schumacher. Every other team beside the Ferrari had the Michelin's, including the BMW. So after few races, Williams and BMW decided to have Michelin redesign the tires and have a wider front tires. After that design, the BMW Williams and Juan Pablo Montoya went on to race the Monaco Grand Prix and then won in 3 and 4 races after that. Soon after that, Juan Pablo Montoya was on his way to becoming the world champion. And what do you know? Ferrari and Bridgestone complained, and the FIA under Max Mosley banned the tires. Only because Ferrari complained. Now we do know today in 2022, there's a supermajority that would have required that. But even then, just because Ferrari complained, they decided, since Ferrari doesn't like it, you're going to ban the tires. And after banning the tires, Juan Pablo lost the next 6 races and then obviously lost the championship. So you can see from that point on that the FIA really has been controversial from the get-go. Now, what you see from 1860 to today, 2022, which is Mohammed bin Salman, the FIA, the way the leaders have been chosen is more like a club than anything else. You see Jean-Marie Blest, I think it's Belestre, is a French guy, was the third. It was Blest, and there's Jean Todt, and there's Mohammed bin Salman. So I decided, let me talk about the last 3. Jean-Marie was extremely controversial because according to Ayrton Senna, he was not a fair FIA president because as he was a French guy and was in favor of Prost. However, Prost believed that the car I talked about yesterday, the MP4/4, that was deemed to be the most successful Formula One car in history, Prost believed that the Honda engineers were sending engines built separately with more power addressed to Senna and giving him a lesser engine. So therefore, Senna and Prost's relationship was terrible. But Senna makes a case, you can look it up, when Senna races Prost in the wet, and Senna was catching Prost by over 3 seconds a lap. Right before Senna were to catch Prost, Jean-Marie Blest red flags the race and awards the points to Prost, and Senna went crazy. FIAs always seem to have had the ability to do what they wish whenever they wished. Obviously, Jean Todt. Now, Jean Todt has 2 years of École des Cadres, which is Lycée des Cadres in France. Jean Todt, for me, I don't think he was qualified enough, at least as far as I'm concerned, to lead the FIA. But he led it for the full term and then pass it over to a guy, Mohammed bin Slayem, who I believe is the worst yet. That's my opinion. Now, this guy also, Mohammed bin Slayem, has a bachelor's degree from American University. That's a 4-year degree. And now this is the guy who obviously, was a rally driver, won, I believe, 16 victories in the Middle East. He's making $4 million. My question is, from Belestre to Jean Todt to Mohammed bin Slayem, it just doesn't appear that these guys are qualified enough, in my opinion, to run an organization. And the other question I have is, how is it that Formula One on NASDAQ, FWON, publicly traded company, and Liberty Media on the New York Stock Exchange, publicly traded company, allow the FIA to make what would be seen by most of not a full disclosure process? How is it that Formula One and Liberty Media are risking their name and allowing the FIA, an organization that is the organization that I think is shaky? I don't get it. But that's the history, and that's kind of how all, in my opinion, is related to why the FIA has always been run by men that have been powerful, that have been diplomats, that have had a lot of money and were very fan of nice cars and became presidents of the FIA, all the way to Belestre and then Jean Todt, and then to the guy who's, again, 4-year degree in business, I don't think suffices to run an organization like the FIA, at least in my opinion.